This conference will now be recorded.
We'll talk about something called asset under construction. This is called as AUC. This is also called as capital work in progress. Assets in short, CWIP. You call it as asset under construction, or we also call it as CWIP. Now, so far what we have done, we have understood what is the basic asset accounting, how you will create the asset master, and how we purchased the asset, how did we calculate the depreciation figures based on the straight line method, based on WDV method, based on useful life method also. Now, when it comes to asset purchase or when it comes to asset procurement, normally there are two type of assets. Point number one, the asset, whatever you have purchased or whatever you have procured is ready to be used, which means the moment you purchase the asset, that can be used directly. These are direct asset purchases wherein you are purchasing the asset and you will be using the asset straight away. There are one more type of assets wherein whatever the asset that you purchase, this asset cannot be used directly. These assets require some more additional effort for it. Maybe you need installation cost, or you have purchased an asset which is not in the proper working condition. You need to add additional improvements to the asset, or you need to add additional cost to the asset to make it function or to make it usable. Now, wherever you are using these kind of things, we will be treating them as asset under construction or AUC asset or CWIP asset. Now, when you talk about AUC asset or when you talk about CWIP asset, these are the assets that are purchased which cannot be used directly unless and until you make it into a usable condition. To make the asset that you purchased to the usable condition, you need to add additional value to it. This additional value is nothing but AUC cost. This additional value is nothing but AUC cost. For the asset that you purchased, you will be adding the AUC cost so that you will convert your AUC asset into the final asset. For example, let's say to take the simple examples, because the point is you need to understand what are the AUC assets and how you will treat the AUC asset, how you will convert the AUC asset into the main or final asset. For example, we have purchased a used car. Clear? For example, let's assume that we purchased a used car. Now, whenever you purchase a used car, there may be different reasons. This used car may be in working condition, or this used car may not be in working condition. Or once you purchase the car, you may want to make certain modifications to it. When you purchase a used car, there may be certain things that you wanted to add to the asset to make it new or to make it in a proper working condition. Assuming you purchased a used car, what are all the possible modifications that you do to a used car? What additional cost that you can spend on this? What additional cost can be spent on this used car? Point number one, I can spend for servicing, correct? I can get it serviced. I can say that whatever the servicing I've done for this used car, I wanted to capitalize this cost to my asset. Next one, I say I have replaced tires. Possible?
Yes.
I can replace the tires, or I would also say I also replaced seat covers. I also replaced seat covers. I have also installed music system. and I would say other accessories. I've put other accessories into the car so that my car is in the proper working condition. Now, whatever the cost that I spent for my car and whatever the amount that I'm spending for these things, are they same or are they different?
Same.
The cost that I've spent for my car, wherein I purchased a used car. Let's say I spent this used car, or I spent approximately 2 lakhs, 2 lakhs or 200,000 for purchasing this used car. And whatever the amount that I'm paying to get this car serviced, let's say this is costing me around 10,000 rupees. Is this 10,000 additional cost above my car, or is this 10,000 including in my car cost?
Additional.
This 10,000 is additional to my car cost. Agree?
Yes.
Is that right? Because car I would have purchased from somebody, servicing I'm getting it done from somebody else. Similarly, tires. I feel that the tires are not in good condition. Let me replace the tires. Let's say I spent around 12,000 for replacing the tires. Is this cost additional cost, or is this cost including in your car?
Additional cost.
This is your additional cost. Let's say seat covers, I got it changed. Let's say I spent around 5,000 for seat covers. I also spent something for changing the music system, assuming I spent around 6,000 for music system. Other accessories, I would say I spent around 4,000. Now, if I look at the overall cost is 2,37,000. Now, the moment I purchased my car, or initially when I spent amount for my car, I was spending only 2 lakh. So 2 lakh is what I have spent while purchasing the car. The additional cost, when will I be spending? After purchasing the car or before purchasing the car?
After purchasing the car.
Alright, the additional cost is possible only when you purchase the car. Once you have car with you, that is where you can get it serviced. That is where you can replace the tires. That is where you can get new seat covers. That is where you can get a new music system. That is where you can get other accessories. Before purchasing the car, it is not possible to spend money on these things. Now, where are you spending these amounts? You are spending this amount on your car, which is already with you,
Yes.
right? So what you will do, you are going to spend this. This is your car cost. This is your additional cost. I'll say this is my car cost. This is my additional cost. This is my total cost. Clear? I'll say car cost. I will say additional cost. I will also say my total cost. Now, this car cost is capital expenditure or operating expense.
Capex.
So whenever you're talking about any expense, you need to make sure that you are able to classify your expense according to two classifications. One is your capital expenditure, which is called as capex. The other one is operating expenses, which is nothing but opex. This car is capex or opex?
Capex.
This car cost is called as capex, which is your capital expenditure. I will call it as capex. What about this servicing?
Opex.
Initially, when you spend this, are you going to treat this as capex or opex when you book this?
Opex.
You will be treating this as opex, operating expenses. Similarly, all the other cost, whatever you are spending, you are going to treat them as opex, which is nothing but operating expenses. Remember, in your interviews, when you're talking about AUC or asset under construction, you must use these terminologies. You must use these terminologies, no other exception to this. Now, initially, when you are purchasing the asset, you are purchasing the asset for 2 lakh. This 2 lakh is called as capital expenditure. Anything which is called as capital expenditure is represented in the balance sheet, correct? Capex will go where? Balance sheet,
Fixed
agree?
assets balance sheet.
Capex will go to balance sheet, OPEX will go to P&L. Anything which is your OPEX, operating expense, will be treated or will be shown in the P&L account. Now, this is what you are going to record, or this is how you are going to account it during the initial purchase or during the initial addition of these amounts towards your car. Now, is there any rule that you have to spend all this amount within the same month of your asset purchase, or you can spend over a period of time? Maybe you may take 2-3 months to spend all this amount. Is there any rule that I have to get this ready within the same month, or I can also get it done maybe in the next subsequent months?
Next subsequent months is also fine.
Right? I can either spend this amount on the same month in which I have purchased my car, or I can also spend this amount on the subsequent months based on my convenience. If I have money with me, I may spend it right away the moment I purchase. Within the same month, I can spend the additional amount. Assuming I do not have the amount, but I wanted to make sure I wanted to get all these things replaced before I start using this car. So I have decided, unless and until I add these additional things to my car, I am not going to use the car. I am not going to use the car. Now this is nothing but your capitalization. Capitalization of asset. When you're talking about capitalization of asset, you're mentioning that asset put to use, or we start using the asset. When you talk about capitalization of asset, you mean either asset put to use or we start using the asset. The moment you start using the asset, that is where you're calling it as asset capitalized, or asset capitalization, or capitalization of asset. Now, how do you capitalize the asset if you purchased an AUC asset? Now, here what will happen? Let's say, is this example clear? Your original car cost and the additional cost and then the total cost. Are these points clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, assuming that on what date you have done this, I will say you purchased car on let's say purchased a used car. I would say this was purchased on 15th June 2023. Now servicing, I got it done. Normally, do you get your car serviced after finishing all the accessories in it or before finishing all the accessories? Or we can get it serviced at any time? Assuming first you replace the tires, I'll say on 27th June 2023, you got the tires replaced. Similarly, I would say on 30th June 2023, you replaced the seat cover. On the same date, you replaced music system. On the same date, you replaced other accessories. Let's say on today you got it serviced. I'll say on 2nd July 2023, you got your car serviced. Now, in short, from the month of your initial asset purchase, from the month of initial asset purchase till the final modification or till the final value addition of your asset. So I am now telling that the moment I complete my servicing to the car, my car is ready to use, correct? Today I'm getting my car serviced. Now the moment I get the car from the servicing center, I would say that this car is ready to be used. You can start using this car. Yes or no? I'll say the moment you receive the car from the service center, this car is ready to be used. Now the moment you are telling this car is ready for usage, that is where you are representing, you are capitalizing the asset. Here, how many months did it take for you to capitalize the asset? Is it taking 1 month or 2 months?
2 months.
How many months you took?
2.
1 month or 2 months? Your transactions are represented in how many months? Single month or 2 months?
2 months.
Month.
It is showing 2 months. You purchased car in June and you have done certain modifications in June, but there are certain modifications, there are certain value additions in July also. Unless and until you find the last modification, your car or your asset cannot be used. If your asset is not ready for usage, you are not going to capitalize the asset. If the car has got some problems, your car has to be replaced with car tires, music system, seat covers, it needs to be serviced. Do you allow anybody to use that car, or you will not allow anybody to use that car? Do we allow or we do not allow? What will you do? Will you allow or you will not allow?
Not allowed. Not allowed.
You will not be allowing unless and until you officially declare that this car is ready for usage. You are going to do it only when you come up with the final cost of the car. Now this is your additional cost. This is your this one. So how you are going to create this? How you are going to treat this? This is called as your main asset or AUC asset.
Main asset.
This is called as main asset or AUC asset.
AUC.
This is
AUC,
called as
AUC.
AUC asset. I'll say this is AUC asset. What is this? Is this called as an asset or this is called as an expense?
Expense.
Expense.
These are called as expenses. Clear? You have one asset and then you have expenses. Your AUC asset value plus the expense value will give you main asset value. Am I correct?
Yes. Yes.
Value of AUC asset plus value of your expense will result the value of main asset. Now, for you to add this expense to the AUC asset, what are we doing to this main asset? You are capitalizing
Additional
this,
cost.
right? You are adding this value to the asset. When you are adding the value to the asset, there are two ways. Now, AUC asset will not be depreciated. Correct? Point number one, AUC asset will not be depreciated. Is my point correct?
Yes, sir.
When I'm talking about AUC asset, I mean that this AUC asset will not be depreciated. Point number two, expense amount to be added to AUC asset using settlement method. Correct? Whatever the expense that you have made, in short, this is your expense. This expense amount will be added to your AUC asset using settlement. When you're talking about settlement, how you are going to settle? So we can settle using internal order. Point number one, we can settle using internal order. Point number two, we can settle using WBS element. Point number three, we can settle using asset itself. Point number three, we can settle using asset itself. Clear, these 3 points? Now, majorly, we will be using this option. Majorly, we will be using this option. Sometimes, some clients will be using this option also. If you want to settle the AUC cost to the asset based on the internal order, this is one approach. You do not want to use any internal order, but still you want to add additional value to your asset. Then you can straight away settle the asset using asset itself, which means directly you are going to add value to the asset, and this AUC asset you will directly settle with the main asset. This is one approach, but majoritarily we will be using something called internal order. Based on the internal order, you will be settling the expenses to the AUC asset, and from AUC asset you will be settling to the main asset. Now, next one. When you talk about accounting impact, how this is going to impact your accounting, or how this is going to create the financial impact or financial effect in your balance sheet or P&L. First one, you are going to have AUC asset purchase. First one, you are going to have AUC asset purchase. Now, normally, whatever you do for asset purchase, whenever you purchase any asset, whether it is AUC asset or it is a normal asset, you are going to record one purchase entry, correct? Whenever you purchase any asset, we are going to record one purchase entry, wherein you are going to debit the asset account, you are going to credit the supplier account who provided you the asset, correct? First one,
Yes.
you are going to debit the asset account which you purchased, you are going to credit the vendor account from whom you took the asset. It will be the same accounting entry here. Asset debit and vendor credit. Next one, you are going to have expense booking. You are going to have expense booking. Whenever you book any expense, you are going to book expense as usual. The way you book any expense, it will be in this similar way. You are going to write expense debit. You are going to put either vendor or cash or bank account. Depends on the nature of purchase that you have done. You are going to debit the expense account. You are going to credit cash account, bank account, or vendor account. This is what you are going to write for expense booking. Now, whenever you do it, AUC is part of one of your month-end activity. Every month you need to perform AUC settlement. You need to do something called AUC settlement. When we are talking about AUC settlement, we are talking about settling the expense to the AUC asset. AUC settlement from internal order. We are talking about internal order scenario exclusively. You have to settle the AUC from internal order, which means point number 4, all the expenses must be booked against internal order as cost object. In short, for you to book an expense to a cost object, you must require a cost element. Am I correct? If I want to book something to a cost object, do I need cost element or not? Correct? Huh? I must require cost element in order to book any expense to the cost object. In this case, I need a cost object as internal order. I need to make sure I will create an internal order as cost object, and all the expenses wherever I'm debiting, I need to debit the respective expense account, let's say tires account, servicing account, the music system or other accessories account to the respective GL account debit side, along with the assignment of a cost object called internal order. When you debit your internal order, your cost will be accumulated in the internal order. Your cost will be accumulated in the internal order. Once your internal order is settled, or once the cost is accumulated in internal order, you will have to settle the internal order. When you settle the internal order, you need to make sure in the internal order there is something called settlement rule or settlement profile. You have something called settlement rule, settlement profile. Now, point number 5, we need to maintain settlement rule in internal order. We need to make sure settlement rule is updated in internal order, which means inside the internal order you are going to maintain whatever the cost that I am accumulating in this internal order. I am going to settle this internal order to the AUC asset. You are going to write whatever the cost you are accumulating in the internal order. Whenever you perform settlement of the internal order, cost that is accumulated in the order will be settled against or will be settled to the AUC asset. In this case, what is going to happen? You have 2 months in which you are accumulating, or you have 2 months in which you are booking the expense. Your order settlement is monthly basis. Every month you need to make sure whatever the amount that is sitting or whatever the amount that is accumulated in the internal order is settled to the AUC asset. When you are talking about month-end activities, this is one of the mandatory topic to be discussed. Now, when I do it, let me go up now. This is my cost. Okay, out of this cost, these 4 costs or these 4 expenses are spent on June 2023. I'll take these 4 amounts. If I look at internal order, these are the 4 amounts. These are the 4 amounts that are booked in the internal order during June 2023, which is coming to 27,000. Now, this is exactly similar to your cost center report. The way you looked at cost center report, in the similar way, you will be looking at internal order, which I will show in the next session. So first we'll understand the scenario, then we will replicate the same scenario as it is in the system. Now, during the month end, you are going to look at internal order value as 27,000. So you will find 27,000 here. Now here, what is happening? You need to recap, you need to think about, there is something called assessment cycle, distribution cycle that we've done. When we did assessment distribution cycle, we were settling the cost between 2 cost centers, sender cost center to the receiver cost center. Here also it will the similar approach. You are settling the cost, but not between the cost centers. Instead, you are settling the cost from internal order to the AUC asset. Cost is moving from internal order to the AUC asset. What will happen? Here there is a debit balance of 27,000 in the internal order. When you do the settlement, system is going to pass a credit of 27,000 in the internal order. System is going to do a credit of 27,000 in the internal order. so that if I look at the total debit posted in the internal order plus total credit posted in the internal order at the end of the month, this will become 0. This will become 0. It has become 0. Now this 27,000, which is a credit to your internal order, AUC asset. What system will do if you look at your AUC asset? Your AUC asset currently shows the amount of 2 lakh, which is your car cost value. Your AUC asset will be showing 2 lakh. At the end of the month, when you perform the internal order settlement, you are going to get, let's say, order settlement. You are going to receive 27,000 here. And when you do a total at the end of the June month, your AUC asset will show 2,27,000. This is your AUC asset value. What is happening? The expense amount is moved out from your P&L and it is loaded to your asset. Your expense amount is moved out from your P&L and it is loaded to your balance sheet account. In short, it is added to your AUC asset. Now, in this June month, did we complete adding all the additional cost or anything we added in July month also? We added something else in July also, correct?
Yes.
In July month, we added additional cost of another 10,000. So what I will do, I cannot start using this asset from July onwards because there is additional cost which is added in the July month. So what you are going to do, you are going to add additional amount called 10,000 in the internal order in the month of July. You will be using the same internal order for adding additional cost. Once you do this total again, you are going to receive 10,000 in July month. You are going to receive 10,000 in July month and this 10,000 will be settled again. You are going to perform settlement once again. When you do the settlement, this 10,000 will be credited in your internal order. Same internal order will be credited for 10,000 in the next month, which is July. This will again become 0. This will again become 0. Now the value that is sitting in your internal order has become 0. This 0 amount has got settled from your internal order. In short, if you look at the order, there is no amount left over in it, which means everything is settled from your internal order to the AUC asset. Now, if you look at the AUC asset, your AUC asset will receive one more settlement here, another order settlement for 10,000. It will receive another value for 10,000. Now, this will be your final AUC value. After this, your AUC value will become 2,37,000. Your AUC value will become 2,37,000. This is what we calculated here. Total cost is 2,37,000. Now, point number 1 that we need to remember here. Purchased the asset in the month of June, correct? Asset was purchased in the month of June, but is our asset ready to use in the month of June or it is not?
It is not.
Is our asset ready to use in the month of June when we purchased?
It is not.
No, right? Our asset was not ready to be used in the month of June because you had spent some amount, but that is not sufficient. That is not sufficient because you had spent additional amount in the month of July also. So I will write settlement June here. I will write settlement July here. Now I will write opening in June. I'll write closing balance in June. Now this is your closing in July. In July month, your AUC closing value is 2,37,000. Now this 2,37,000, whatever you got by adding additional value of 10,000 from order to AUC, now is your asset complete or anything else we have spent on it?
It is completed.
Is this complete or anything else was spent?
Yes, come.
Any additional amount you see here? After 2nd July, anything else is spent or that's it? Anyone?
It is completed.
It is completed. Now, finally, what you are going to do here is you need to settle the AUC asset to the main asset. So what you are going to do once you receive the total amount in your AUC asset, you will have to create a main asset. Point number 6, I'll put we need to create main asset for car. Point number 6, you need to create a main asset for car. And point number 7, we need to settle AUC asset to main asset. Point number 7, you need to settle AUC asset to the main asset. When you perform this AUC asset settlement with the main asset, what system is going to do? Here you are going to have AUC settlement. When you talk about AUC settlement here, whatever the amount that you are able to see currently on the AUC asset, that will be credited. Currently there is a debit balance of 2,37,000. System is going to put 2,37,000 credit in this. It is going to put 2,37,000 credit. When you do this, your AUC balance will become 0. When you do this, your AUC asset balance will become 0. Once the AUC asset balance is becoming 0, what we have done, we have settled value from AUC to main asset. In the AUC account, there is a credit. Whenever you have a credit, there should be corresponding debit. If credit is sitting in AUC asset, where will be the debit sitting? Where should the debit go?
Main asset.
Main asset.
Debit should go in debit to main asset. Correct? Now I'll put this is AUC asset. Let me write something called main asset. Car main asset. In this, in which month we are settling this?
Every
July.
month end. July, yes.
This is settled in July. Now your car value will receive the amount in which month? June or July? The value is loaded in car account. The main actual car account, is it received in the month of June or in the month of July?
July.
June.
In the month of July. Correct? Now settlement is normally executed at the beginning of the month or at the end of the month?
End
End
of
of
the
the month.
month.
End of the month. Settlement will be done at the end of the month. When you are doing the settlement at the end of the month, on what date your settlement is posted? Is it posted with the month closing date, or I can put any date for my closing, my settlement? I have to put month closing date for my settlement. I will quickly show you only the settlement screen, because this is one point that I want you to remember. To do the settlement of your anything, so I'll go to a screen called KO88. If I go to KO88, here I have something called settlement period. I have something called posting period. Do you find anywhere something called posting date. Can you find
No.
anywhere on the settlement screen posting date? Yes, no? There is no date called posting date. You have a date called value date. You have a date called value date, but there is no date called posting date, which means in your asset, even though you completed the servicing on 2nd of July, even though you completed the servicing of asset on 2nd of July, on what date you will be able to load that amount or the complete amount into the main asset? On 2nd of July or on 30th of July, on 31st of July.
31st July.
So you will be able to load that amount into your main asset on 31st July only. Does this mean that you can start using the asset from 3rd July or you cannot start using the asset?
We can start using on 3rd July.
If your car is ready to be used, let's say today is what you are going to receive the car, assuming that the car will be delivered shortly and it is ready for taking a drive from tomorrow onwards. Will you be start using the car from tomorrow onwards, or will you wait until 31st July wherein you are going to transfer the amount from AUC asset to main asset? What normally happens?
When the car is ready, we will use it.
So when the car is ready, normally you will start using it. When you are starting to use when the car is ready, but whenever you are using the asset, on usage of asset, there is something called depreciation.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Right? When you are starting to use the asset, there is something called depreciation. If you are using the asset from 3rd July, if you are using the asset from 3rd July, from when we need to calculate depreciation? From 3rd July onwards, or from 31st July when you are actually loading the amount into the asset account?
3rd July.
3rd July.
You'll have to start using the asset from 3rd July. That is why when you look at the settlement screen, you have something called asset value date. Even though you do not have the posting date, but there is a date called asset value date. Correct? Can you see asset value date there on the screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, in your asset accounting, this asset value date is having straight away direct impact on your depreciation calculations. Your asset accounting, in your asset accounting, asset value date contains the direct impact on your depreciation posting or depreciation calculation. Whatever the date that you put as asset value date, from that date or till that date, depreciation is calculated. If you are purchasing the asset, from value date onwards, your depreciation will be charged. If you are selling the asset, till the value date, depreciation will be charged. No matter when you post the transaction, but your depreciation is always counted or counted to based on the value date. Now, what is the value date here? What value date are we going to put?
31st July.
We are going to put asset value date as 3rd July. But settlement will be happening on what date?
31st.
Settlement will be happening on 31st. Settlement will be happening on 31st, but asset capitalization date will be 3rd July. Correct? Now, when you are calculating depreciation, car main asset will show 2,37,000. So this amount will come into your asset account on 31st July 2023, and depreciation will be calculated from what date? You will be calculating depreciation
3rd.
Depreciation will be calculated from 3rd July 2023. Clear?
But sir, before that you said till AUC we can't depreciate. So the buffer time, which is from 3rd of July till 31st July, so in that period the asset is not in main asset.
Correct. The asset is not in main asset, but from that month onwards, the asset is there.
Yeah.
If you see it from the month perspective, from July onwards, your asset is ready for usage.
Yes, sir.
So normally what you will do, you will be charging the depreciation based on the number of days that the asset is used. This is because you are loading the value into the asset from the AUC asset or from the internal order on a monthly basis, which means as a month-end activity. Settlement cannot happen at the middle of the month, because even if you perform the settlement at the middle of the month, system cannot load that amount on the middle of the month. System can load that amount only at the end of the month date, in short, month-end date. Correct? Even if I perform the settlement today, which is the 2nd July, the entry will be posted with 31st July. Entry will be posted with 31st July, but in your asset accounting, your depreciation is always calculated on a monthly basis. You will be calculating depreciation on a monthly basis, which means for a particular month, how many days you have used the asset, based on those many number of days, you will be charging the depreciation. Clear? So this you will practically understand when you see this on the system. This is a little tricky part, but this is very simple. Slight challenges will be there. You need to understand those small logics, how the numbers, how the dates are coming into picture. But in short, whatever the rate of depreciation that you are going to put, you are going to start calculating the depreciation from 3rd July onwards, because from 3rd July you started using this asset. From 3rd July you started using this asset. From 3rd July only you must charge the depreciation on this asset. Even though you are settling at the month end, you can start using the depreciation from 3rd July. Option number 1. Option number 2, I can tell that we will be using this asset from 1st August onwards. Another option what we can say is we will be using this asset from 1st August onwards. If we are using the asset from 1st August onwards, will there be any depreciation in July?
No, sir.
No.
If I want to start using this asset or start using this car from 1st August, there will be no depreciation in the month of July. Now your client may decide on any ways. They may say that no, the car is ready, why to waste, so we will start using it because we are using rental cars, or we do not have sufficient cars, we are taking the cars on rental, or we are using taxi services which we do not want to use anymore. Since the car is ready, we want to use this, and we are fine with charging the depreciation from today onwards. Okay, so you will have different ways, you will have different requirements coming up from business, and we need to make sure you understand why they are talking like that, why they are using likewise. Accordingly, you need to make sure you provide a solution to capture the depreciation, to capitalize the asset based on the requirement. It is not that you will have to use the asset from 1st August, that is also correct. You can also use the asset from 3rd July, that is also correct. Clear? In either ways, we need to make sure we are clear with what to do, what is the requirement, how the data is flowing from your internal order to AUC asset and from AUC asset to the main asset, how your depreciation is being calculated. This is again one of the mandatory topics to be discussed in your interviews. First of all, asset accounting is key topic in your interview. From your asset accounting, if somebody is asking you about asset, they will definitely touch AUC asset. They will definitely ask you about AUC asset. You need to make sure you are good at AUC asset. Reason, if you tell the process, they will not be okay with it. They might ask you to take an example and then explain how the data flow happens in your AUC processing. Which one you will be using? If you are using internal order, how exactly you are going to capitalize the asset using internal order? How you are going to capture the cost? How you will move the cost to the internal order, and how from internal order to AUC asset, and how from your AUC asset to main asset. Okay, and all these points slowly we have to memorize, slowly we have to remember, so that you will be in a position to explain it to the other person. It's not about how you do it in system, that is a secondary, but the primary point is to make sure when somebody is asking you about AUC process, make sure you are able to take out your own example and then explain. Because when you're explaining this, you're talking about the business process, correct? You're talking about business process. Take any example which is a little valid scenario, valid example, and then explain if this is the situation, if this is the requirement, this is how we have done it. If somebody is asking you, have you worked on AUC? If your answer is yes, they might ask you, what was the business requirement? What was the business requirement in which you did AUC? Can you brief about your client business requirement? Or can you take an example and then explain me the AUC process in SAP? So these kind of questions you will typically get on these areas. So make sure you are able to talk comfortably, you are able to talk confidently by taking one valid example. If possible, introduce or talk about accounting entries also, how this will affect your financials. That is where the other person will get more convinced with your explanation. If you are talking about everything, but we are missing out the accounting part, we are missing out the business examples, the other person will not get convinced no matter how effectively we talk. Okay, any questions on this?
So can we use this example for interview prospect?
You can use the same example in your interview.
So, when we convert internal order to AUC, we will use transaction code. T code is CJ88.
No, CJ88 is for your project related settlement.
Okay.
If you wanted to settle your project, if you wanted to settle your WBS element, then CJ88. But this is your internal order. Internal order is KO88.
And then as AUC to asset also done by this
No, no,
KO88.
no. You have the different T code. AIAB, AIBU T codes will be there. Those are
Okay.
different transaction codes. You can also use AUC without internal order. AUC
Okay.
process can also be used without internal order, which means whatever the amount that you're loading as expense, instead of debiting to the expense account and then moving from expense account to the respective AUC account at the end of the month, you can straight away load this amount into the AUC account straight away. This is also a process that can be used. But when we know the different options, when we know the different possibilities, we can talk confidently in your interview. That why, if they ask, why did your client not use this? You can tell that our client is not okay with using internal order settling from here to there. They wanted the other option. So we proposed this solution which convinced our client, and we went ahead with this process without using any internal order, without using any WBS element.
Okay.
So we
So,
will see the
sir,
same process in two ways. Yeah.
sir, what exactly is internal order and why it is what for what purpose this is used?
Internal order is one of your cost object which is used for storing the cost on a temporary basis. Okay, so you can store the cost on a temporary basis in the internal order. Later on, you will be settling or you will be moving out the cost from internal order to the respective object, maybe your asset or to the cost center. So now I talked about internal order. In the next sessions, I will be talking about, now we talked about AUC with internal order example. In the next sessions, we will be talking about internal orders so that you will understand the concept of internal order, why we use it, how we configure it, why we settle it and how we settle it, so that you can connect the points to understand the business process, the exact usage of these objects in the real environment.
So we can store the cost in for more than one particular period, accounting period in
Yes,
internal order.
you can store.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Okay.
Hello,
Okay, sir.
sir. Hello,
Yes,
sir. Now you are treating this all the expenses. Okay, expenses. These all expenses amount is converted to the capital. Yes,
correct. We will be capitalizing this. You're right.
cap. Actually, in the depreciation chapter, suppose you are purchasing the second-hand car, we are installation charges in the academic purpose only. That time I consider the asset account data to entry bank or whatever maybe, but simply here only first you treat it as expenses. These all are converted to the capital.
Correct.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, okay, sir.
Okay, because on the AUC asset, there will be no depreciation unless and until you capitalize it to the main asset. You're not going to charge any depreciation because you're going to show this. These are asset under construction. Some additional activities or some value addition, you are still doing it. This is not in usable condition as of now. Unless and until you settle the value from AUC asset to the main asset, you will not be settling it. Sorry, you will not be charging a depreciation on it.
Okay. This finally these expenses will be zero. Settled.
Yes, finally the expense will be zero. When the expense becomes zero, the expense will get credited to the expense account to make it zero, and then it will be debited to your AUC account to add the asset value, to increase the asset value.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Now I understand. Thanks.
Yeah. So I'll configure this and I'll post the same entry with the same example using two approaches, one with internal order, one without internal order, so that it is clear for us to understand and you will be confident enough to answer in your interviews. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, Ravi, go ahead.
Ajay, in the case number one, when you finally settle that 10,000 rupees on July 3rd, you mentioned that that's where you started the depreciation. Even before the depreciation in the asset, we need to have the capitalization date. Where do we mention that capitalization date? That is number one. Let's say that we are capitalizing that asset on July 3rd on the final settlement date. I have the provision to use that asset from July 10th. That means my depreciation need to start from July 10th. Whether that is possible to mention when I am doing the capitalization date?
Yes. Normally, what will happen whenever the amount is coming and hitting your asset account, your main asset account as first debit. Whenever you do a first debit in your asset account, that is called as your capitalization date. In this case, what is happening? We are debiting the main asset during the settlement, which is going to take place on 31st of July. Correct? Huh? So 31st July will become your capitalization date. When you configure your base methods, your depreciation initial configuration, there is a setting which will ask us to decide on what date or from what date you want to start your depreciation calculation. So you will have two options. Option number one, to start calculating depreciation from capitalization date. Option number two, to start to start the depreciation from depreciation start date. Okay, in the configurations, you will be deciding from what date you want to start the depreciation. Majoritarily, we will be proceeding with depreciation is always calculated from depreciation start date, which is maintained in the asset master at this level. So this capitalization date will become your settlement date. Clear? This is automatically updated by the system, which cannot be modified by us. And your depreciation areas, if you go here, you will find a date which is nothing but a depreciation start date. Let me click on this. You will find a date here, depreciation start date. Here you are going to manually feed 3rd July 2023. So that system will charge depreciation from 3rd July and it will post for this 27 days or 28 days, whatever it is. Because according to us, our asset is existing in July month, and for July month, you are using the asset from 3rd onwards. So from 3rd onwards, you are charging the depreciation. Because you are going to charge depreciation on a monthly basis, you are going to post depreciation on a monthly basis. It is only verified whether the asset is existing with you on that month or not.
So
Clear?
if I have understood your point correct, the asset was capitalized on 31st July. So I can start the depreciation from 31st July, or I can start the depreciation from 3rd of July, or I can start the depreciation from August 5th. Am I correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. When I put this scenario in the system, I will run all these scenarios, and then I'll show in all the 3 scenarios how system is showing the depreciation, how the numbers are being calculated. Okay. All
Sir,
right.
we will be using the technical clearing account in AUC.
No, technical clearing account is used only for the asset acquisition. This is not asset acquisition. This is called as your asset settlement.
Okay.
Okay.
So if anyone asks the entries, so the entries which you mentioned is enough for this AUC.
Yes, enough. I am going to write the detailed entry when I run this scenario on the system.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Let me stop this recording.